Hardships come in hand with existence in the Dragon Ball world. It's also a place that is anything but peaceful after all. Uphill battles are common, but most of the time the good guy win. There is an exception to that, a world where the good guys were annihilated, and evil reigned as the victor. I am talking about the world of future Trunks. The events of this world were so devastating that Trunks was forced to travel through time and dimensions in order to save it. And it all started with the death of Goku. Goku was the Earth's primary hero, and with his absence, the very fabric of unity that filled the hearts of the Z fighters fell apart, leaving them vulnerable before their deaths at the hands of the androids. After Goku fell, everyone who remained as a hero of Earth eventually fell with him. The strength they had remained post-Freeza was not enough to overcome Dr. Gero's androids, and in amounts of obsession, they were slaughtered in an instant. Entire generations of heroes fell to the androids, leaving the next generation to take up the mantle. The future that once felt so bright quickly fell into ruin. It was a future where you were at the mercy of the malevolent androids, where any day could be a last. However, that was only the start of the world that the hero known as Future Trunks was unwillingly made to reside in. Future Trunks was the light that would stand against the turmoil, assisted by those close to him. Their world was dark, but not without hope. Humanity was on the brink of existing, but in a constant state of fear and unease. Everyone who tried to rise up against the androids failed and met with a gruesome end. With the many deaths caused by the androids, even the legendary Dragon Balls were dormant because Piccolo was among the casualties. After most of this generation fell, the only one who was there to witness their failure and live to tell the tale was Gohan. He was cast in the role of the Soul Protector, being the only one who stood even a slight chance at besting the androids. Future Trunks was an infant since the beginning, so although he would later grow to become the hero his timeline deserved, it would not be for a long time. Throughout the years post-destruction, Gohan tried and failed to defeat the androids. The only level of Super Saiyan he had been able to reach was Super Saiyan 1, which he probably achieved after tapping into his fear at what life for himself had become. He charged forward on his own, because no one else could. This would be the recurring fate for the heroes of his timeline going forward. The unease of loneliness, the benefit of companionship was lost early on when everyone was powerless. Fighting on his own was not a choice that Gohan would have made. As Future Trunks grew into a young man, this was obvious when Gohan made the decision to train Trunks as Piccolo had trained him. The androids would spend years toying with the humans that remained, slowly but surely tearing apart their livelihood, leaving destroyed cities in their wake. Gohan could do nothing but bide his time, slowly trying to train himself. With the little knowledge he had gained from Piccolo, without a partner to train with, it was a slow going. And that was probably another reason that Gohan eventually made the decision to train Trunks. He kept losing, and he feared that one day he would lose for the last time. If he was going to fall at some point, he at least wanted to give the people of this world another chance by giving them a reformed Trunks. After all the horrible events they went through, it was the least he could do. Gohan spent all of his young life fighting fruitlessly, and with his training of Trunks was a step in the right direction, it was covered by a veil of sorrow. It marked a transition towards a new future that Gohan could not change. Not only was he accepting that he was powerless to save anyone, but he was building up Trunks to take that placement of powerlessness in his place. Although Gohan wanted to continue fighting, and that was true up until his final moments, he had basically given up on being a hero. Instead, Gohan had begun to place himself along the rest of humanity as someone who could barely survive, let alone win. He continued so that the innocent people of Earth could potentially survive another day. Trunks was reckless in his actions. The training he underwent with Gohan only escalated his feelings by unlocking his latent power. The recklessness that Trunks showed came from his lack of experience. He had never fought for his life as Gohan had. Only Gohan, who had fought the adversities of the human race countless times, knew the hopelessness of the situation. It was the recklessness of Trunks that changed everything, scaring Gohan into becoming reckless himself. Gohan knew what it meant to lose people. He had lost everything from his old life. When Trunks first decided to fight, alongside Gohan. It ended in disaster and even cost Gohan an arm. Yet another thing lost to the androids. He realized that Trunks was not ready. At any moment he could lose him and be unable to do anything about it. Gohan continued to train Trunks more desperately than ever before, with only one arm remaining. Gohan's combat potential was severely weakened. Training Trunks was all he could do at this point. He was able to push Trunks past a level where he could hold on to the power of a Super Saiyan. They might stand a chance, but unfortunately it was never going to be. And the android struck again. Trunks begged Gohan to let him fight, believing himself to be stronger since the last time. Gohan could not bring himself to agree. He was still consumed by the fear of losing Trunks. He caught Trunks off guard, knocking him down, so he could face the androids alone for the last time. For a long time, Gohan fought alone, and in the end, he died alone. He could not live up to the heroics of his father or the rest of the Z fighters. A sad end to the generations of fighters was considered stronger than anyone. When Trunks awoke, his mentor nowhere in sight. He expected the worst. Those fears were realized as the world went dark and began to weep, rain pouring down to hide the carnage left behind. Hope reigned in the heart of Trunks as he flew over the destruction, even that was crushed upon seeing Gohan lying dead. The sea fighters were gone. Only Trunks remained in the path of the oncoming storm, and he was not ready. He yelled out to the world in a fear-filled anguish, his rage and sorrow swirling him with emotions he had never felt before. These emotions awoke the Saiyan power, his hair glowing yellow and illuminating the darkness. Trunks was the only light in the earth, a prospect that frightened him greatly. Gohan could not win, and with that amount of training that Trunks had received, the odds of Trunks winning were similar to his late mentor. The fear he felt was justified in that moment. Overlooking the lifeless Gohan, he was the most vulnerable he ever been in his life. He had become the last hope of humanity, and for the next 3 years, he took up the axe of Gohan. He trained, pushing himself with his new Super Saiyan power, hoping that he would exceed the power necessarily to save the day. The death of Gohan was also considered the final straw for those affected, most notably Bulma. Other than Gohan, Bulma had been there from the start, and she saw all the failures that the Sea fighters had endured up to the death of Gohan. After Gohan died, she realized that the constant attempts to defeat the androids only ended. Now that Trunks was the next in line to defend the Earth, Bulma understood that continuing down the path they have been going down will never work, especially with Trunks at the forefront. With no other option, the next logical path to take was to build a time machine and travel through time to an alternate timeline. Before the attack of the androids, it was extreme, but with the genius mind that Bulma had, a time machine was very possible and was genuinely the only choice they had. No one who remained had the power to face the androids alone, so potentially bringing back the only man who could make a difference made the challenge worth it. During the time it took Bulma to prepare the time machine, Trunks tries to accomplish the goal that Gohan had left him, defeating the androids and bring peace to the Earth. Even though he tried with renewed faith in himself and his power, the result was still the same as it was for Gohan. Trunks would survive, but he would not get anywhere close to defeating the androids. This did not dissuade him from helping people, but eventually he was beaten down and hospitalized by the androids after heated battle. Trunks was restless and driven by his desire for revenge, feeling closely tied to his heart after Gohan became their victim. It made him the perfect choice to be the one to use the time machine and find a way to put an end to the android's tyranny. Trunks was similar in a lot of ways, but the 3 years after the death of Gohan left him a matured individual. The responsibility had shifted onto him, and although it scared him originally, it led him to become incredibly determined. To Trunks, Gohan was an idol of power and masculinity that he aspired to be. He wanted to rise to a level that Gohan would be proud of, perhaps even surpassing him in the process. In fact, Gohan was almost like a father figure to Trunks. Throughout their training together, Trunks had learned so much about him and had shaped his own personality off of Gohan, becoming well-mannered and observant. Gohan was incredibly passive influence on growing Trunks. It was his influence that made him so different to the Trunks in the main timeline. The lack of Vegeta probably helped with that. The effects of Gohan lasted for years after his death, leading Trunks to fight with unwavering confidence, even in his worst moments. Traveling through time was an insane premise, an intense unknown that would frighten anyone, but Trunks took apart with a smile, because that is how Gohan would have liked to see him. Showing worry and fear was the last thing that Gohan wanted for Trunks, so with a glowing smile and a continued outlook of positivity, Trunks took the trip into the past. It worked too. Trunks managed to learn of his past and was able to learn from his trip into the past, humbling himself with also giving himself the strength to do what is necessary. Gohan might have been gone, but Trunks knew that he did not die without a purpose, and upon returning to the future, Trunks was focused on seeing his mentor's dreams come true. Gohan was a strong fighter, but without the knowledge and training of the older Z fighters, who had committed their entire lives to training. You could only do so much for Trunks during their training. The chance is to go back and learn from the most prominent fighters of Earth. Trunks the fighter, who could save his own timeline. The chance to go back and learn from the most prominent fighters the Earth has ever known was instrumental in making Trunks the fighter who could save his own timeline. On top of the enhanced training, Trunks was also introduced to his father. While they had a rocky relationship during the first meetings, they eventually began to care for each other. Getting to know his father allowed Trunks to get some peace of mind. He no longer had to guess what his father was like, because he managed to see it with his own eyes. It meant that Trunks had one last thing to contemplate about as he returned to his own timeline. Saying his goodbyes was hard, but Trunks knew he had to return to his own timeline. The reason he came to the past in the first place, so that he could develop himself and find a way to stop the androids. In his time in the past, he fought the androids, and he even fought something far more stronger than anyone had seen before, Perfect Cell. It was tough. The toughness of the whole thing was what allowed him to become far stronger than the Trunks that lost against the android. It allowed Trunks to become the Trunks that could win. The evil android that haunted him all his life were now nothing but insignificant annoyances. For perhaps the first time in his life, Trunks was truly ready. Trunks was merciless, mainly because the android did not deserve mercy. They did not grant it to people they killed. And Trunks was not one for second chances to those so purely evil. He did not toy with them either. He had a job to do. He had people to avenge, and above else, he had a world to save. He left nothing in his goal of destroying the androids, and as the ashes of Android 17 fell to the earth below, the threat of the androids was no more. It was a moment of relief for Trunks, because his entire life he had been lived under the androids. It was not just Trunks that allowed this victory to happen. His mother as well as the other Z fighters from the past. He was much stronger now, both physically and mentally. Trunks was no longer as reckless as he once was. He was now more focused and would eventually finish a fight as quickly as possible, as he saw the consequences of your own pride get ahead of you. With his mindset, he destroyed the androids, but also realized that Cell existed in his world. With his newfound power and experience, even Cell was no match for Trunks, who finished him and brought long-sought peace to the world. The humans that remained eventually come out of the rubble of the destroyed homes and cities, banding together to rebuild and bring back the world they barely even remember. An entire generation had passed on the androids, but would take some time to go back to normal. Trunks kept the time machine. It was the most important thing to the people of Earth simply because without it, the androids would be still there, destroying whatever they wanted. Trunks continued to use his power to protect the Earth, and Bulma would help him in rebuilding the city. Following the lessons taught to him throughout his experiences in the past, Trunks quickly killed Deborah and Babidi when they appeared, stopping the resurrection of Majin Buu with ease. Trunks valued the peace that he earned alongside his friends and family, so he held onto it tightly. Trunks had managed to overcome the androids, as well as Cell. Peace has come to the future.